Everyone, I'm going to be speaking to you about the first half of February and the full moon in Leo that we have right at the start of the month on the 1st. But February is a very seismic month, and that could manifest in many ways. And I'm particularly thinking of the solar eclipse coming up in Aquarius on the 17th. I'll be talking about that in the next video, but that is square to Uranus. Uranus rules Aquarius. That's very heightened seismic activity. So that could be literal earth movements, it could be geopolitics, it could be politics, it could be economic, financial, behavioral, social. It could always, as an astrologer, I never quite know how it's going to manifest, but the energy is very dynamic and very volatile, it's fair to say. So the more we can stay in peace and calm, the more we will help the collective to navigate these big times. And so I'd just like to backtrack really, because that last for 10 days or so of January is very dynamic as well. We have the new moon on the 18th of January, which by the time I publish this will just have passed. I'm currently filming this on the 16th. We have the new moon at 28 degrees of Capricorn. In fact, it's almost at the anaretic degree of Capricorn. And we know that the anaretic degree is often where things express to extremes sometimes. So it's just within about a quarter of a degree of the anaretic degree. Capricorn, as I mentioned in the last update video, is to do with business, the banking system, financial system, all that kind of thing. Materialism in general, capitalism actually. And it tends to favor older people, Capricorn, because it's ruled by Saturn, linked to, in its myth, Chronos, chronology, older age. People who have strong Capricorn emphasis are very often good with older people. I know several people with the moon in Capricorn who do work with older people. They run old people's homes, or one friend goes around and visits and just chats to older people. They have great patience and affection for older people. But of course, this also reinforces the social political structure we've had, that we tend to have older leaders at the top and have had for many years. That I think is going to change quite soon, or the beginning of the change. So that Capricorn new moon, 28 degrees of Capricorn, is really the launch of the old to the new. I think we are just really within days of starting to feel very different energy as a lot of the personal planets, as I'll be describing, move from Capricorn, cardinal Earth, into Aquarius, which is fixed air. There are big changes already in the financial system. I mentioned in the conversation with Ann Tucker that Jupiter is in Cancer currently, ruled by the moon, and wherever Jupiter falls, whichever sign it's in, it tends to magnify or expand the things that are associated with Cancer. So that may have helped to prop up the housing market to some extent, because the moon is the home, but it's also very linked to silver, and I think we can see very clearly what's happened there. I mean, silver is absolutely on a tear at the moment. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not even a financial astrologer. I'm just observing what has happened. And although Jupiter, right at the end of June, 30th of June, moves into Leo for 12 months until July 2027, that tends to favor gold. Leo is linked to gold. So we could see greater increase in the gold price. Again, this is not financial advice, but I actually think the positive increase in silver may well continue, because it's so much needed for industrial use, and more than ever with so much technology. And it also is needed in AI data centers, which are growing as well. Everything, all the markets are going to be volatile, I think. And as I've mentioned in a couple of other videos at least, I think it's possible there could be some kind of AI or tech bubble brewing at the moment, because Saturn moves into Aries on the 14th of February, and it was in Aries at the dot-com bubble in the very late 90s when we had the dot-com bubble then. So we'll see what happens, but just be aware, there are many aspects of society that are very volatile. In contrast, actually, the very positive side of Capricorn, and here I'm not talking about sun signs, I never speak about sun signs. Capricorn is about stability, integrity, it's about a strong moral compass. It's about being your own leader, actually. It's about discipline and mastery, really mastering something. And with the sun and moon, that new moon in Capricorn being pretty much exactly sextile to Neptune, that's very much about spiritual sovereignty, spiritual mastery. And that really is our way forwards, I think, on a positive timeline. So we could see a lot, I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes with the financial system. I don't know how or exactly when that's going to land, but I heard quite a staggering statistic today from the US that 10% of the population own 93% of the equity markets, and that's staggering, because Capricorn energy tends to favor inequality because it tends to support hierarchy. Going back in history, I've gone back and looked at Pluto and Capricorn historical cycles way back, and they tended to be, when Pluto was in those periods, tended to be very unequal, sort of autocratic, top-down societies. And as Pluto moves into Aquarius, which it did in November 2024, but remember, this is just the beginning, because Pluto is going to stay in Aquarius until January 2044. It's just the beginning. That's when the paradigm tends to topple, and it's the beginning of a new socioeconomic structure, which is much more equitable, never completely equal, but much fairer, much more equitable. So we're just really at the beginning of that right now. Now, from about the 20th, the new moon is on the 18th, from about the 20th until the 23rd of January, the personal planets are starting to move from late Capricorn into Aquarius. So we have Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all between, in fact, it's actually from the 17th to the 23rd. 17th to the 23rd, they're all moving from late Capricorn into early Aquarius. And of course, they do that round about this time every year. That's not a big surprise. What is different this year is because Pluto is in Aquarius, and Pluto is a real heavyweight in Aquarius. It's going to be there till 2044. And so all of these personal planets start to form conjunctions to Pluto. On the 20th, Venus is conjunct Pluto. We could see quite a lot of financial change. Venus has to do with money, currencies. We could see some, quite big shifts in the values of currencies that day. On the 22nd, we have Mercury conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto is secrets and Aquarius is truth. So time and time again, when you have hard aspects between Mercury and Pluto, you have truth coming to the fore. Secrets are revealed, particularly if we're looking at the sign of Aquarius. That same day, the Sun conjuncts Pluto. So that's a big day for power struggles, assertions of power. We also have Mars at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, the very last degree of Capricorn. So it's going to be, with those three aspects, that's going to be a very potent day around issues of power, truth coming to light, secrets being revealed. And again, 29 degrees of Capricorn, that very final degree of the zodiac sign, and I believe from memory that was the midheaven of the Wall Street crash. I believe. I'll have to check that, but I believe that's the case. The status reputation of Wall Street at the Wall Street crash in 2029. Then on the 27th of January, we have Mars conjunct Pluto. This is brute force. This is very strong energy. In an individual's chart, this can give tremendous willpower, focus, determination to, stick to it, see something through. But it can be very forceful in the global situation. And that's the same day that we have the moon conjunct Uranus. All of this energy that I've talked about is revolutionary energy, and particularly when the moon is conjunct Uranus, the planet of revolution. On the 30th, Mars comes to exactly conjunct the ascendant of China, which is at 5 degrees of Aquarius. So this is very, very active, churning, revolutionary energy. Aquarius energy demands freedom, greater demand for human rights, civil rights, greater equality in society. It's very much about freedom, truth. Whenever Pluto moves into a sign within the first year or so, it starts to bring about a crisis. Think of 2008. Pluto had just moved into Capricorn a few months earlier, and we had the banking crisis in September 2008. Aquarius is more linked to issues around freedom and truth. It's also linked to things like science and technology. So we could see a crisis around science and technology in some way, how they have been used for the good of all or not so much, let's say. Aquarius also favors youth. Capricorn favors the older generation. And remember, I'm not young myself here. I'm being totally objective here. It favors youth. And what's fascinating is if we look at the governments that have been recently overthrown, they have been overthrown by young people. The Nepalese government, very recently the Bulgarian government, governments in Kenya, Morocco, Madagascar, I believe the Thai government too. It's literally young people taking to the streets and not backing down until the governments are overthrown. And this is really the Gen Z generation that were born somewhere between 1997 and 2012. They are feeling particularly revolutionary because they can see how the whole socioeconomic structure is set up and it isn't in their favor. So, of course, it doesn't have to be across society revolution on the streets. It can be, as I've talked about many times in other videos, and it can be a revolution of love, a revolution of choice, that you energetically disengage from the system. You just energetically decouple. You become self-employed, you shop at farmers markets, you don't go to supermarkets, you make different choices. You decouple from the system as far as you're able, and many, many people are doing that. Neptune on the 26th of January moves into Aries fully. It moved into Aries briefly last year in the sort of middle months of the year, but it's now moving into Aries fully until 2039 for that whole period. It stays in the sign 13, 14 years. And I've got a whole video on this because Saturn moves into Aries to join it on the 14th of February. And as we know, the conjunction to the minute 044 of Aries happens on the 20th. I've already done some time ago a Saturn-Neptune video. I will put the link for that below. So I don't want to go through all of that again, but one of the things that historically Neptune has been known for is idealizing or glorifying war, the glory of war. Many of you know that the American Civil War in 1861 began within a day of Neptune entering Aries. So there can be this kind of idealization of war. Now, clearly we have war in many places in the world, and, war drums sounding louder by the day. Yes, there is absolutely a timeline for war. Absolutely. But are you going to focus on that and feed it? That's up to you. But I'd suggest they are better places to put your focus. It's also very interesting that as a consequence of Neptune in Aries historically tending to be linked to war, it's also linked to conscription. And, I would just ask yourself whether you think Gen Z particularly, or young people in general, are going to think that's a good idea for them. And recently there's been a change in the ruling of the Armed Forces Bill in the UK. This will come into practice in spring 2027, which isn't that far away. I mean, it's just over 12 months away. And they've expanded the age range on which they can draw as a strategic reserve. And what that means, they can call on people in the UK who previously have been in the armed forces, who are now up to the age of 65, to be conscripted, essentially, to come and join the strategic reserve and help defend the UK. And equally, I'd ask that same question. Because this is a much older generation. The consciousness has changed a lot since a world war, and I think that is one of the things that could feed the revolution as well, the revolutionary behavior. So Neptune in Aries is also about taking spiritual action. Be your own spiritual hero. When Uranus moves into Gemini on the 26th of April, that's about choices. And so that they will be sextile, Neptune and Uranus, making your daily choices spiritually based would be a great way to read that. Making your daily choices spiritually based. But of course, you don't have to wait until Uranus moves back into Gemini. You can start to do that right now, of course, because I think that's a really good idea. And remember, all I've been talking about with war, remember that the past does not dictate the present or the future. We do. Humanity does. And humanity has left the tram tracks of the hamster wheel of predictability. And I think that's becoming clearer by the day. And a lot of the people I speak to on this channel, as you will know well, have a very different view of our future and where we're headed. There's not just one timeline. As I've said many times, there are 8 billion timelines. You don't just have to focus on the one that's appearing on the news, however dominating that one is. So although the personal planets shift from Capricorn into Aquarius every year around this time, as I say, you will never in your life have had this configuration because Pluto hasn't been there since 1798. And so, yes, it dipped in a little bit over the last couple of years, but really this is the first time where it's fully in Aquarius that we will have this set of conjunctions, which I've just described, coming together with Pluto. And so it will activate that whole Pluto principle. And I'll put the Pluto in Aquarius video below that I filmed, I think, way back in 23 originally, of what that's all about. But it is a revolution in the socio-economic and political structure of our world. It's that big. It's an entire paradigm shift. So big energy shift, cardinal Earth into fixed fire. And remember, for these last 16 days, as we go into February, that we are still in the year of the wood snake. We are still shedding the old order. As of the 17th of February, and that, of course, is the day of the solar eclipse in Aquarius, that is when the Chinese New Year starts, and that's the beginning of the year of the fire horse, which is completely different in terms of its energy. And then 3 days later, we have Saturn conjunct Neptune, exactly. So let us now look at the chart for the full moon in Leo, which happens on the 1st of the month. Okay, so as always, I set this for the UK. Unless you live here, ignore the clock face, ignore the houses. We're just looking at the planets and their aspects to each other. And so we can see a very heavy emphasis. As I was just speaking there, giving you the dates when these personal planets move. There's Pluto here, of course, and these other personal planets were moving into Aquarius in those last, really from the 17th of January onwards. And so incredibly heavy emphasis. Issues of freedom, truth, greater equability, civil rights, human rights, etc. Science, technology, shortcomings of, crisis around, etc. Humanitarianism is big. Community living is big. So, yeah, there's some really wonderful things here. And Aquarius in its shadow side can have a kind of agitation, because just like the glyphs suggest, there's a sort of zuzziness. It's like interference on the television set. There's a jazziness in the mind, potentially. If you've used screens too long that day, tech too long that day, you can get very jazzed up. And remember that it's not currently in my software, but the beautiful symbolism of Chariklo comes into this. Actually, Chariklo is conjunct Mercury at this full moon, and Chariklo is at 21 degrees 24 minutes of Aquarius, right on that Mercury, which is all about, she was the wife of Chiron in myth. She helped to heal Chiron simply by her state of being. So it's all about dropping into that Buddhist, eternal, permanent ground of being, that stillness, that exquisite 0 point. And I'd so encourage you to do that as often as you can. I've talked about that in many, many videos. We do have great forcefulness happening here, because Mars is actually at the midpoint of Pluto and the Sun. So whatever's happening at this time, it's happening with great force. And I'm going to talk about some of the other themes in a moment around leadership, but I think that's very strong. Whereas, the other side here is about humanitarianism, as I say. And Venus in Aquarius is about humanitarian love, not just a personal love, a love for your brothers and sisters across the world. Feeling compassion with them, feeling empathy with them, particularly if they're caught up in an extreme weather event, an extreme earth event. And I do believe they will continue through 2026. The earth is throwing off her own trauma, going through her own rebirth. We are moving in symbiosis with her. And so she has to be allowed to express that. And so I do think more seismic activity, more solar activity, more extreme weather will occur. And we have to come together either in meditation, sending love, sending money, whatever we can do, because at the end of the day, we are one humanity. And my free 15-minute meditations every night really focus on situations like that. If you go onto the meditation page of my website, there's a video there where I had the idea. They're 2 free 15-minute guided meditations if you want to use those, or you just join energetically in a way that I describe in the video, etc. So, but this is a full moon in Leo. The sun and moon are always opposite each other at a full moon. So we have the moon at 13 degrees of Leo. And Leo, of course, is heart energy. And this is where we have to start to operate from in a much bigger way. We've lived through the information age, and our attention span has been so shortened by Twitter, X, TikTok. We just jump from one thing to the other, as so many things demand our attention in our modern world. But it takes us out of the heart and into the head with short attention spans. So part of this whole paradigm shift is to get back to the heart. And we know from the beautiful work HeartMath has done that the heart's toroidal field is, I believe it's 50 times stronger than that of the brain, and the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. And we are going to start to live much more fully from the heart. Leo energy is loving, dramatic, warm, expansive, demonstrative, creative, playful, love of children, love of creating. And together with Neptune just having tipped into Aries on the 26th of January, these are both speaking of, and in fact they're sesquiquadrate to each other, they're speaking of sovereignty. Find the hero inside yourself. The way out is the way in. Or the way in, rather. The way in is the way out. Turning inwards is the way we get beyond this paradigm, is what that means. So find the hero inside yourself, find your spiritual sovereignty, big time. Leo is also about leadership. Now, this can be a natural leadership that you just inspire confidence in other people to let their light shine. It can be very beautiful in that way. It's linked to leaders, it's linked to celebrities, it's linked to royalty because it's very regal. But the shadow expression of Leo, and every single sign has its shadow expression. And again, I've never talked about sun signs ever in my work. This is just the Leo energy. The shadow side is self-glorification, service to self versus service to others, entitlement, being more important than other people. I once saw a T-shirt and on it said, "I've arrived so we can start now." And I thought that was a perfect expression of the shadow side of Leo. So the full moon is also shining a light on any of those behaviors. If our leaders have been superior, self-glorified, entitled, service to self rather than serving the people that they are being paid to serve, a very bright light is going to be shone on those behaviors and where those behaviors have fallen short. Because this is also actually, Leo is the individual, Aquarius is the people, en masse. So this is also highlighting, as I've just really mentioned, head versus heart. So there are lots of different themes within this Leo Aquarius full moon. And we need to go really forwards thinking of the good of the people. I mean, this is going to be strengthened in a way with heavy Aquarian emphasis, but also Jupiter, as I've just mentioned, moves into Leo right at the end of June, 30th of June, and stays there for a year. And this is going to highlight what is good, benevolent, heart-centered leadership versus self-serving, self-glorified leadership. That's going to become very, very clear. And the Aquarian emphasis is going to demand that that becomes clear. So whatever is unfolding at this full moon is two sesquiquadrates here linked to this launch of a new beginning, a whole new paradigm, a new beginning for humanity, a new beginning for you individually. And as I've talked about again in many videos recently, what is your new beginning? What's your new passion? What's your new project? What's your new career? What's your new job? What's your new relationship? What are you going to throw yourself into with all of this incredible energy of new beginnings, of pure potentiality from the 20th of February onwards? And also think more broadly for humanity and how you can feed that. The moon is also conjunct the dwarf planet Varuna here. And Varuna is mentioned in the earliest Veda texts thousands of years ago. And Veda is not only linked to the deep oceans, but also the kind of primordial space from which everything manifests. Varuna is god of the divine cosmic order, stands for spiritual wisdom, moral truth, and divine justice, and great integrity. Alan Clay, who runs the Dwarf Planet University, calls Varuna mastery consciousness, a self-sufficient mastery. And this is really what we're getting into, with Neptune and Saturn both being in Aries from the 14th of February onwards. That's very much about, the Aries, the keywords are I am, and Leo is, I shine, I create. This whole new paradigm is about us as humanity, individually and collectively, stepping into spiritual sovereignty. And so, although Varuna has great power, he rules without force. He rules without force. And so this is what we need to move towards. And in general, leadership going forward is no longer going to be, as I've mentioned in the past, so longer top down, this vertical socioeconomic structure. It's going to be teamwork, more horizontally based, visionaries, progressives, innovators, who gather people around them who want to be part of their team and take those ideas forward. That's how it's going to work. So we have some very clear themes here around leadership, power, service to self versus service to others, elitism and inequality, etc., head versus heart. Where is the new beginning that is being birthed from this? And so I think in these days, we are, as I mentioned right at the beginning, it's quite seismic. It could be geopolitically, I think that's very likely, politically, economically, financially. All of these things are going to sort of come to a head. February is the beginning of an extremely dynamic period because it's also the beginning of eclipse season, February, March. And by late March, April, just like we have a huge stellium, a grouping of planets with 3 or more planets in a sign is called a stellium. By late March, April, we're going to have a huge number of planets in Aries. Yes, that's ruled by Mars and that's war, but that isn't the only expression of Aries. What about personal courage, truth, initiative, standing in your power, sovereignty? But it's also, remember, about this mastery consciousness where you choose through your sovereignty to live in peace, calm, compassion, love, and joy, and not be swayed by any external drama coming at you. That's when we're reactive. That's when we're still actually in victim. So we have to step out of that. Remember that although we may have had Saturn moving through Aries in your lifetime, if you're more than, about 30 years old, you will never have had Neptune moving through Aries fully now in your lifetime, because Neptune has an orbit of 165 degrees. You will never fully have had Pluto in Aquarius in your lifetime because it was last fully in Aquarius in 1798. These are real, very different times with very different energy for humanity. So I just want to pick up on a couple of geographic areas. I'm going to stop sharing here. I looked at the astrocartography for this full moon in Leo, and it was quite remarkable to me that at this full moon in Leo, the Uranus is conjunct the midheaven, on the midheaven, running straight through Greenland. The midheaven is the government or the leadership. Now, there isn't a chart for Greenland. It's under the authority of Denmark. But I just think looking at the astrocartography for this full moon in Leo, it's fascinating that that is suggesting some radical change or, certainly some push against the government and leadership in Greenland. And, we're all aware of what's happening in the world with that. This full moon is also, I looked at the chart for Iran, and I'll put the details of the chart for Iran below. There are 2 charts for Iran, but this one, I think, it is particularly sensitive to transits. This was set for the 1st of April 1979, 3 o'clock p.m., 3 p.m., so 1500 local time, Tehran. It has an ascendant at 17 of Leo. It has a midheaven at 10 of Taurus. So this full moon in Leo is conjunct the ascendant, the identity of Iran, and square to the midheaven, the government. So again, that suggests a bright light is being shone on activity in Iran. And also in that chart, Mercury, which is communication, internet, etc., is at 27 of Pisces. Saturn, transiting Saturn, has been sitting right on that Mercury. And as you may know, the internet was cut, communications were cut. It was very hard for people, for the Iranian people, to get information. Mercury also rules the second house of the country's economy and the 11th house of politics. And I know the economy has been very suppressed, as well as the media being suppressed, and also it suggests some, political challenge, let's say, political challenge. I happened to come across the chart for California, which was interesting. That was set for 9th of September, 1850, 9:32 in the morning in San Jose. That has a midheaven at almost 9 degrees of Leo, 850 of Leo, and the North Node in that chart is at 14 of Leo. So this full moon is conjunct both the midheaven and the North Node in that chart. I don't follow the politics closely in the US, so you Americans will be much more aware of any political change in California. We also have the dwarf planet Haumea conjunct the moon and the ascendant of that chart in California. The moon and the ascendant, that was the people, and the ascendant is the identity, both at 3 degrees of Scorpio, where Haumea is right now. But Haumea has been sitting there for some time. Haumea is a very slow-moving planet, round about 300 years orbit. So that isn't a sudden one-off thing like this full moon in Leo. But that was just interesting. So we'll just observe. And the final point was, and I've mentioned this before in recent videos, that if you look at the chart for China, the moon, the people, is at 3 degrees of Aquarius, where Pluto is right now. The ascendant, the identity of the country, is at 5 degrees of Aquarius. Sorry, did I say Leo? I meant Aquarius. The ascendant is at 5 degrees. So Pluto is conjunct, transiting Pluto is conjunct the moon, the people in the chart for China, and is coming on to, in fact, this year will be coming on to the identity. Now that could suggest some greater assertiveness, let's say, on the part of China. So what do we do with all this, dynamic energy, rapid change, endings and beginnings, so much happening so quickly, and the way we control our reality and control our state of being is by going inwards. So these things will not surprise you. I've been talking about them for many years, and they're all for free for everybody, all for free. Be in nature, bare feet on the earth, meditate, candle gaze, breath work, have a rolling mantra. If you can't think of anything better, we're welcoming in an ever-expanding consciousness of love. Join the free 15-minute meditations at 7 p.m. UK time every night, all for free. Thousands of people are doing this all over the world and having some beautiful experiences that really gives them validation that we are building, along with many other people facilitating meditations all over the world, we are building a brighter and stronger web of light in every moment. And people, because we're all becoming more psychically sensitive now, people are starting to perceive this, and it just gives so much hope and optimism and validation that there is not just one timeline. So the old world is collapsing very, very loudly, and I'd suggest that's going to get even louder. So just know that. Have we been caught off guard? No. Along with other astrologers, I've been talking about this for the last couple of years. It's right on time. It's right on time. I would be very surprised if this wasn't happening right now. So no, it's right on time. No, it has to happen. It has to collapse in order that we can see it, not to repeat it, but also to really help us change our patterns and where we put our attention. Stay in calm, stay in peace, stay in joy, stay in gratitude, stay in compassion. Act acts of love and joy, remember, are also acts of defiance. One of my favorite phrases. So know that history, the past, does not define the present or the future. We have left the tram tracks. We have moved beyond that repetitive hamster wheel of predictability, I believe, absolutely profoundly. If you listen to the conversation I had just last night on the 15th, it was published, with Dr. David Clements, that will give you some idea of where we are headed. And it's extraordinary. Humanity has never done this in physicality. And we are moving at speed into higher and higher dimensions of being that were considered absolutely unachievable even a few years ago, absolutely out of the picture, not even on the radar. They're now becoming highly achievable, and we're going to do that in our lifetime. Or certainly the potential for that is there if we want to step into it. So our future is immensely exciting. Remember, there's not just one timeline, and remember that your focus is your superpower. Catch yourself all the time with the social media you're consuming, with the thoughts you're running in your head. Put post-it notes on your cupboards and fridge and bathroom mirror. Your focus is your superpower. These are very extreme, dynamic, destabilizing, and absolutely magnificent times for humanity. So I hope that's helped. Lots going on. I'll be back soon with a update video for the second half of February, which will include that solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th, followed by 3 days later, Saturn joining Neptune at 0 degrees 44 of Aries. God bless. I hope this has been helpful for you. Bye for now, and much love to you all. And thank you for all the amazing, loving support you give me every day in the comments. It is deeply appreciated. So much love to you all. We're in this together, remember. We're holding hands and we're in this together. God bless. Bye for now.